Ek wil vir julle almal baie welkom sê by die Durbanville Kinderhius se jaarvergadering. Ons gaan terugkyk oor die periode 1 April 2019 tot 31 Maart 2020 en 'n bietjie vir julle meer vertel omtrent ons aktiwiteite en ons programme. I also want to use this opportunity for a special thanks to all our corporates, all our volunteers and all our individuals that has so generously supported us during this reporting period. And it's now my privilege to introduce Dr. Tinus van Zyl that will do a prayer for us.
Welcome to you all. I want to read from Matthew chapter 16. From that time on, Jesus began to explain to his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem and suffer many things at the hands of the elders, chief priests, and teachers of the law, and that he must be killed and on the third day be raised to life. Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. "Never, Lord," he said. "This shall never happen to you." Jesus turned and said to Peter, "Get behind me, Satan. You are a stumbling block to me. You do not have in mind the things of God, but the things of men." Then Jesus said to his disciples, "If anyone would come after me, he must deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. For whoever wants to save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for me will find it. What good will it be for a man if he gains the whole world, yet forfeits his soul? Or what can a man give in exchange for his soul?" I do not often draw wisdom from the business world, but I read the other day that a young South African entrepreneur said in her business, she tries not to do what is easy, but what is right. I think this year has been anything but easy for any business, for any organization, also for the children's home. But as followers of Christ, we do not strive or try to do what is easy, but we try to follow Christ, to obey Christ, to give ourselves for His kingdom and His glory. And the wonderful thing is that we are not alone. You are part of this community of faith, and we can carry each other, we can encourage each other, we give each other strength, we pray for each other, and in this way we are not alone. We know that we have this whole community of faith, we have each other, and the Lord carries us and guides us every day. Thank you for your support, thank you for your prayers. Let us close our eyes and we pray together. Here God, ons wil vir U baie dankie sê vir die Durbanville Kinderhius, wat soveel jare al 'n gemeenskap van gelowiges is wat omgee vir kinders, wat omgee vir mekaar, wat in diens staan van U koninkryk, van U nuwe wêreld, wat juis wil omsien na hulle wat die geringste is, die kinders, wat so naby aan U hart is. Dankie vir elke vrywilliger, elke donateur, elke personeellid, en dankie vir al hierdie kinders wat ons harte so diep kom aanraak. Here God, wees by hierdie kinderhuis, dra ons elke dag, en dra almal wat betrokke is en hier werk en hier verbonde is, al die pad vorentoe na die koms van U koninkryk. Ons bid dit alles in die naam van ons Here Jesus Christus. Amen.
Ons was in die bevoorregte posisie dat kyk net via pront uit vir ons genader het om 'n insetsel te doen saam met ander versorgingssentrums om te wys wat 'n invloed die COVID-19 pandemie op versorgingssentrums soos Durbanville Kinderhuis het, en ons wys nou baie graag vir julle hierdie video.
Baie van ons is al raad op met kinders by die huis. Ons moet byhou met akademie, ons moet die kinders besig hou ensovoorts. In kinderhuise moet huisouers na tot 12 kinders kyk op 'n slag en hulle ouderdomme wissel van tussen 2 en 18 jaar. Ons het by van hierdie kinderhuise gaan kuier om te hoor wat die uitdagings en vreugdes was tydens die inperking. Die Durbanville Kinderhius bestaan al vanaf die 1800s en hulle het staande gebly dwars deur die inperking as gevolg van 'n loyale gemeenskap en moedige personeel.
Wat baie belangrik is om te weet, is dat dit eintlik baie duur is om 'n kind in 'n kinderhuis te versorg. So as jy 'n kind in die samelewing kan help en sy ouers kan help om 'n goeie lewe te maak, dan is dit die eerste ding wat jy doen. Maar sodra hierdie kind in die kinderhuis ingevat word, kos dit jou eintlik 22 keer meer in terme van die versorging self. So dis regtig waar kinders waar daar geen ander keuse is. En dit is erge gevalle van mishandeling en misbruik. So dis regtig die laaste uitweg wat die stelsel sien om 'n kind by te staan, 'n kind en sy ouers by te staan.
We have out weekends at least once a term, and then obviously those children that have permission to go home for the holidays as well.
And then with the lockdown, all of that changed.
Yes, that was very, very difficult for our children to accept. It was the Department of Social Development's regulations that said that we have to really limit, for obvious reasons, the movement of children. So we had to communicate to the children the dangers and the risks that were involved and the reasons why they were not allowed to go home for these holidays. But it was very traumatic for them. We had lots of tears, lots of tissues. But I must say, if there is one thing that I've learned through this lockdown period is how resilient our children are. Obviously, they can't wait for it to be over because they all want to have mama and papa gaan sien. They want to go and visit their aunties and uncles. And obviously, the parents themselves, families want to come and visit. And we've had to put a limit on that, and it's been really difficult for them.
Die COVID-19 het niet op allemaal afgekomen. So dit was soos 'n skok, zou ik zeggen. Maar ja, ek dink die span het goed saamgewerk in terme van ons moes gaan sit het as 'n span, al die departemente saam om iets uit te werk soos in wat vir ons gaan werk en obviously iets wat vir die kinders gaan werk, want aan die einde van die dag die kinders was die ding wat ons eerste gestel het.
Die grootste uitdaging is maar, jy weet dat die kinders op die perseel self is en die aanpassings wat hulle moet gemaak het en dan natuurlik nou met jou befondsing, want ek bedoel daar sekere belangrike befondsingsbronne wat eenvoudig net weggeval het. Ons het nou 'n veldtog begin waar ons vir mense vra om R50 te investeer in die kinderhuis en baie mense het vir ons daarmee gehelp.
We've had a lot of support, especially in the beginning with our homeworks and our children that are needing to carry on with schools. I mean, I personally have 3 children and trying to do homeschooling with 3 children have been difficult, let alone 144 children. So the community have been fantastic in bringing us resources, bringing us books. We had some volunteers from the schools in the local area come and assist us in different ways.
Die kinderhuis het obviously hulle het gevoel hulle moet 'n skoolprogram begin om seker te maak dat die kinders akademies bybly en ook om seker te maak dat hulle 'n roetine het en hulle het onderwysers gesoek om die skoolprogram te kom loods, aangesien dit is wat ons doen. Dit is vir die kinders 'n groot aanpassing, omdat ek is 'n juffrou, maar ek is nie hulle juffrou nie. En ek doen met hulle die werk wat in hulle kurrikulum is, maar ek doen dit nie dieselfde as wat juffrou dit sou gedoen het nie. Hulle is baie vinnig om vir jou te sê, my juffrou doen dit nie so nie, of my juffrou sê ons moet dit so doen.
Initially, it was shock. You know, everybody was sort of, and then there was a bit of a hype around. This is something new. This is something exciting. Yay, we don't have to go to school. But I think also the flip side of it was that they weren't allowed to be going to see their families. They weren't being, able to go out and go and meet with friends. And then I think the reality set in, and there became sort of a low mood amongst the children. And I think the longer the lockdown has lasted, the worse that has gotten. Telephone contact has been the main form of communication with the children and their families during this time.
Het was baie swaar om elke dag met almal se gesigte altyd op te hou. Maar dit was okay, ons het kop oor water gehou. Het was nie altyd lekker nie, maar ons was daar. Ons het mekaar geondersteun. Alhoewel ons maar geen aan mekaar gevat het en so, ons het mekaar se distance gehou.
Nou dink jy die frustrasie het erger geraak met die inperking?
Ja, van die kinders stry meer baie oor onnodige goedes. Som van hulle wil glas bekleis aan mekaar.
When they've been forced, and we've all been forced, every one of us have been forced to be locked down in homes, that limitation of freedom has triggered the past hurts and experiences. So they've almost had a re-triggering of past traumas to the point that we've had to really closely monitor and evaluate some children whose mental wellness has not been very stable. The children are extremely fearful for their families. And obviously not being able to have contact, they're not sure, are they okay, are their families all right? So that is where the anxiety lies.
Ek is baie trots op my ma, alhoewel ek is nie so. Sy is baie supportive, maar al doen sy nie goed as wat sy moet doen nie, al as sy nie die perfekte ma nie, maar 'n ma sal enige iets doen vir sy kind. Al as dinge hoe sy moet altyd kop oor water hou. Want ek weet hoe voel het om haar nie agtergrond te wees en om weer op uit te kom.
Baie van ons kinders, ek dink miskien spesifiek dogters, is baie meer emosioneel, maar oor die algemeen seuns ook. Maar soos ek sê, dit het 'n groot impak, want ek bedoel, dis letterlik iets soos ek sien nie my familie, ons weet nie vir hoe lank nie, en ek dink dit is die vraag, die fear of the unknown, die onbekende. Jy weet nie wanneer gaan dit op nie, maar wanneer mag ons regtig weer besoekers kry nie, maar wanneer mag ons regtig weer mekaar tref.
Ons hoop dat 'n matriekafskeid is en dat soos ons gaan uit die huis uit, miskien gaan ons nog 'n nuwe jaar het, hopelik dat die corona oor gewees.
I would like to introduce you to Lizanne Lennox, the chairman of the Durbanville Children's Home Board. The Durbanville Children's Home date back to 1883, and we are proudly celebrating 137 years of caring for vulnerable children. And I'm now going to ask Lizanne to tell you a little bit more about the programs and the activities that we had this past reporting period.
Good afternoon. Our challenge in this year was to rise in the face of adversity. In these exceptional times, the fate of an organization is often sealed if cohesion among staff disintegrates, funding depletes, and abundance of resourcefulness is absent. I'm proud to report that the character of our staff complement and stakeholders was central and determining in our response in this trying period, that is the slowing of the economy and the devastating impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. We applied innovative practices and necessary protocols to protect the community of our vulnerable children at this children's home and to produce stimulating programs in this period where they were in the various lockdown periods. Education was key for us, and stimulation programs on the grounds and the main campus of the children's home was definitely also a big benefit for our children. Unfortunately, there was restrictions in the movement of children, meaning that they couldn't go outside the walls, the perimeter of our central campus, and they couldn't rotate back to their community of origins, which were their families and nuclear families. And many health and safety checks were put in place. And thankfully, we also had sponsorship for immune booster products from various individuals in our community. Our children's reaction to isolation, separation, and movement restrictions were closely monitored by our staff, and we provided coaching and therapy to assist them in this particular way. Our children had also the support of the social workers and various other social and professional assistants in this period during lockdown. The Durbanville Children's Home team and management members also adjusted very quickly, and many staff modified their working hours and their method of operating within the lockdown period. Many of them even lived on our grounds and sacrificed time with their families, so to provide critical services and prioritize the care of our children. Staff was often transported to our facility to minimize the risk factors of public transport, and key areas where there was high traffic areas were installed protective screens, perspex screens, for the benefit of the volunteers as well as our children and our staff members. Our social workers and professional services adapted also to alternative way of practice in line with health professional standards. Our spiritual committee came to the party and was actively involved in ensuring church services and enabling online daily devotion to staff. And we continue to focus on staff wellness during this very important period. I would like to report regarding the key challenges that we did have in this last year. The first being that we cannot ignore the fact that a residential care facility like Durbanville Children's Home, the fixed cost per child per month is very high. In comparison to a child in our community, the child in a care facility where there's safety and security and therapeutic interventions prevention given is 20 times more expensive than back in the community. we only receive 30% of our cost per child from the Department of Social Development. So therefore we need to raise a substantial amount of income per month to sustain our systems, our approaches, our intervention, and our care models towards our children. The second most biggest challenge is the fact that there's a high number of defensive children living in very bad social conditions in South Africa, and for prolonged periods of time are exposed to different and variable forms of child maltreatment and abuse. These children entering our system, unfortunately, don't always have healthy attachments and don't always know how to conform, to fit into a family system. And therefore there's various unhealthy behaviors and challenges with regard to their adjustment, their security, their need structures, and their adaptation to our environment. Management of these children delayed, curved, and unhealthy development is challenging for staff and professional interventions and require resources and many skills from our staff to manage. Some of our buildings on our home is a further challenge, as some of them already is in existence since 1918. Due to the lack of funds or the allocation of funds to core services, there is a deterioration of some of our buildings, which need at this stage urgent repair and investment in. Furthermore, our IT structure is strained and unable to support the growing security and operational needs that Durbanville Children's Home need from the IT staff. The fourth challenge is that of unification, and that's a complex challenge. We live in a society where the ambition would be that when a child enters Durbanville Children's Home, they stay here for a minimum period, and the services presented to the child in our community through different stakeholders and social workers and different interventions. Unfortunately, due to the economical situation and the social infrastructure collapsing in some parts of our communities, what happens is those services is not provided. And the consequence thereof is that children which should be able to reunificate with their families, it doesn't happen. That brings for the children a great amount of frustration and disillusionment in terms of their placement here and being reunified with their families. Luckily, I'm positive to report that there's many innovations and current successes within Durbanville Children's Home. The first being during the lockdown period and beforehand, as well as going forward, is that we have a very accurate and positive learner support system. Our learner support system is in the form of a bridging school, so there's no real ambition to produce a schooling system here, but rather a bridge for a child which enters the system, which perhaps has not been in school for many years, and which will eventually transfer to a school allocated for that child. Now this schooling system, which we have our own teacher educator, and we have at certain times a lot of volunteers involved in this program, they produced during the lockdown, where there was a lack, unfortunately, of volunteers due to the restrictions, they did produce a daily structured environment to our children and specified stimulation as well as lots of support. And this was great for our children. That made them more balanced and more productive with regards to homework and stimulation in general. Our second success and innovation is that of our expansion of our independent living program. Now you would remember in prior years we had the Lily House program where children which already finished their primary schooling and is advancing to job opportunities and tertiary skill development, that they have been placed in this separate campus away from our central campus. Now in this year we advanced our program to a satellite facility for school leavers, which can spend their final months at school in this more homely setting where there is more space and perhaps more of a serene environment to be able to focus on schooling as well as to prepare for more self-regulation and independent living away from the central campus. Our third success is that we are now stabilizing and advancing a social development behavior modification program for our children by way of stimulating training of our child and youth care workers. This is quite a distinctive and unique program where child and youth care workers are involved in within an 18-month period and at the end of that will receive a diploma for the efforts employed as well as their skill development. And this is very necessary when we're asking for child and youth care workers to be therapeutically involved and support behaviour modification within all our children. Thirdly, I want to mention to you that we had a very unique strategic session opportunity this year where we debated and we lobbied about care models, human resource practices and management systems. And this is very needed within a very much social evolving landscape in the current situation we are living in. So we're looking forward to a single care alliance model for children living in our central campus, which aligns more with typical homely environment where there is different age children of the same gender within one home, where there is similar caretakers which they can bond with, which they can form attachment with, and with whom they can feel secure. Further among this, we're also going to present and roll out a strong peer support structure among staff. And further, we are busy developing leadership among our staff. Fourthly, and this perhaps is well thought out creative initiative, is that we're presenting an ecological social care model on our main campus. And this will involve that we look at our environment in totality and we develop social spaces for pre-teens and teens. So to align their needs, their social needs, and to have the freedom within that social surrounding to stimulate and to relax and to be with peers of similar age. Similarly, we're developing edu-play environment for our younger children to make sure that perceptual, big motor, small motor skills are developed while in play. And thirdly, we're looking at a restorative justice perspective for children in terms of behaviour management. This will mean that the child will be able to reflect on behaviour, to restore justice to the people that he or she has done wrong to take responsibility and start to self-regulate in terms of own behaviour. And this is a very unique and positive change that we would like to bring about. In closing, a last few words. Thank you for your assistance in these trying times. Thank you that you are staying and helping and assisting, and that we are on your foreground. Thank you for your continuous support and devotion to Durbanville Children's Home. I'm proud of the sense of cohesion among staff. I'm proud of the devotion of this staff and this system to our core services. Thank you very much, and God bless.
At the Durbanville Children's Home, we have the most amazing children. We've got 144 children that ranges in ages from 2 to 18 years. And you're now going to have the privilege to see them sharing their joys and their challenges with you on a video. And you would see that they were extremely impressed with the programs that we presented to them during the COVID pandemic. And also they love playing with their friends. I'm now inviting you to enjoy this experience with me.
Vertel 'n bietjie vir Tannie Louise, wat is vir jou lekker van die kinderreis?
Om te speel en saam my maatjies te speel. Dis
What I enjoy at the children's home is that we have free time to play and everybody just enjoys their own space, and like everything is always in order and placed in the right ways, and there's no problem with any like big situations that the tannies and the ooms can't handle. So I actually enjoy it because I'm safer here.
What's nice about the children's home is there is a lot of people that care about you, and basically, how can I say, there's a lot of people, and it's nice about the children's home that people care.
What I find nice about the children's home is the fact that we have programs that we can do things and that we can communicate with our child youth care workers, and that we can engage with them and build a relationship. And I like engaging with the children, but not always, and the fact that we can roam freely around.
What I enjoy about the children's home is that I feel safe and the environment, it's natural and I enjoy it and I have friends all around me.
Wat vir my eintlik lekker is van die kinderhuis is eintlik is meer veiliger en hulle gee meer aktiwiteite vir ons en ja.
Wat is jou droom? Wat wil jy eendag word?
My droom is om 'n soet meisie te wees en om eendag groot te word sodat ek 'n polisievrou wil word.
What I want to be when I grow up is a lawyer, because I like to support someone through his cases and understand what he's going through. So, yes.
I want to be a psychiatrist for deaf children.
I would like to join the Air Force.
I would like to become a flight attendant because I want to travel the world.
Wat ek wil eendag word is eintlik om mense te help en 'n brandweerman te wees vir mense en ja.
Was dit vir jou lekker om 'n nuwe paar tekkies te kon kry?
It was baie lekker vir my.
Actually, it was because the experience, I had a big smile because when I'm at home, I never get, every day I don't get new shoes or new school bag when my school bag breaks. But at the children's home, they sort out all that stuff for you and there's no problem of going to school or not going to school. So everything is sorted and I love my shoes.
Yeah, I love the color though.
Yes, I was very grateful for it because we don't usually get stuff like this often. So I was actually really grateful for it.
Yes, because it's not every day that you receive a new pair of tekkies.
Ja, Tannie, dit was lekker Tannie en voete lag so 'n bietjie Tannie. Is nie elke dag wat jy dit kan kry nie van daar is dit te veel. Daar is 'n sekere tyd wat jy net kry en 'n bietjie gelukkig te wees en so Tannie. En jy moet klere aantrek wat pas by jou en ek hou van aantrek en mooi wees vir mense en ja dan.
Hoe het jy die lockdown ervaar?
Nie so baie lekker nie. Van ons moet bande gebly dat net 'n paar tye kan ons uitgegaan het en so.
The lockdown was a little bit strange because there was no, it felt like a ghost town because there was nobody really moving around in the streets. You just see one car or two maybe driving by the street, but it was really boring not to see my friends at school or yes, to see my family as well. My family also plays a good role model in my life.
To be honest with you, I didn't. But it was okay because I wasn't a lot of stuff, but the children kept us busy and stuff like that, so it wasn't so bad.
Well, in the beginning, I started getting depression, and then I found people that actually cared about me and that made my life easier than what it was at that time. So lockdown was kind of boring, but I got over my depression.
It was tough, but with friends around, it was easy.
Ek het die lockdown ervaar as dit was 'n bietjie tough en moeilik vir ons, maar Durbanville Kinderhius het eintlik lekker programme uitgedeel vir ons en dit het vir my gelukkig gemaak en so 'n bietjie mense gehelp deur die lockdown en so.
Na wie verlang jy die meeste?
Na my broers en my familie. Ek wil graag na hulle toe gaan.
What I would say is obviously my family because I don't have a problem with just sitting in the room. It's just I'm worried about them. What are they eating tonight? What are they doing? Are they still alive? Are they still safe? I think every children's home child is worrying about their family because you're thinking about what they're doing. You miss your relationship and your ways, how you talk to them at home, and you miss that away and everything, yes.
There's a lot of people that I miss. Miss my friend from Germany a lot, and I do miss my sister a lot.
Honestly, my dad, because I haven't seen him for years now, and it's kind of hard without him.
My family members, and I would like to visit them in the near future.
Nee, die meeste wat ik verlang is eindelijk mijn pa en mijn ma, en ik wil graag wel eens voor mijn pa eindelijk zien van uiteindelijk wist mijn pa niet wat, ik wil hem graag zien en zo wat dan.
As a residential care facility, the Durbanville Children's Home has got a very high fixed cost per child. It actually costs you 20 times more to take a child out of the community and place them in a facility like Durbanville Children's Home. Also, in addition, the Department of Social Development only contributes a third of our annual budget, which makes it very difficult year on year to make up the shortfall. I'm now going to ask Francois Achenbach, the chairman of the Financial Committee, to give you an overview of our current financial position.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to start off this financial presentation by saying that it wasn't a great year for the Children's Home from a financial aspect, and also that although COVID-19 officially only started after the end of the financial year, it still did have an impact on the result, especially the last 3 months of the financial year. In presenting the figures, what I'll do is we'll first look at the income for the year, then the expenses for the year, an abbreviated income statement, and then also the investments over the last 5 years. Moving on to the income, you'll see there's overall quite a substantial drop in the income, but we'll go through the subsections one by one. Our donations and bequests, quite a nice growth there of 12.7% or 1.1 million for the year. The big contributors there is the individuals, where the donations were up about 13%, business donations 6.5%, and our inheritances were up 39%. Our subsidies, the increase there is basically the increase we receive from the government on the grants. Then our fundraising, there's quite a material downward result. The main contributor here was our concert ball that didn't happen during the past year. That roughly contributes 1.5 million rand in gross income, although the net result out of that is only about 300,000. But as I say, the income is about 1.5 million that we didn't get. Then what I referred to in the beginning, the impact of COVID, you'll see the negative growth in our market value of the investment was 3.5 million rand for the year, which is a substantial figure. It's basically reflective of what happened in the last 3 months of the financial year, which is January to March, where basically worldwide in global markets we were hit by the extreme sell-offs as the warnings about the impact of the coronavirus took effect. The devaluation in our investment portfolio over those 3 months specifically was 3 million rand on its own. Like we all know, in the short term we will have ups and downs and a lot of volatility, but we definitely or should expect that over the long term there should be it should stabilize more and should be more stable. From a investment perspective, we've got a formal investment policy which is evaluated, or the adherence to this policy is evaluated on a quarterly basis by the financial committee, and the principle behind it is that we get good returns over a certain period, but also still protecting our investment, our capital from investment. In conjunction with the negative growth and interest, those two are basically results of our investment portfolio. The other expenses basically flat year on year. Most probably 80% of the other income is represented by our sale of goods through our charity shop, which has shown good growth over the last few years actually. So that's all in all a good result, ending us with a total income of just short of 17 million rand for the year. Moving on to the expenses. Personnel expenses, roughly or just short of 60% of our total expenses. Year on year slightly up by 1.8%. The contributing factor to not having a bigger increase is the fact that we did have some vacancies during the year that wasn't necessarily filled immediately, but where the functionalities were absorbed temporarily within other functions. Our increases is based on inflations with some adjustments for performance. So all in all, that expense was well managed during the year. Household expenses. Our household expenses was basically again flat year on year. The biggest contributor to this expense line is our groceries. That was up basically 4.5% for the year, but other than that, the expenses were managed well. Our office expenses, a relative small amount in terms of our total expenditure. In here is expenses like our municipal charges, printing and stationery, and our telephone and postage. Our premises is predominantly the maintenance and security of the premises. Again, we managed and limited any unnecessary expenses, which contributed to the saving we had there. Services, as mentioned earlier, under our fundraising, where I mentioned that the ball didn't happen and that the gross income was 1.5 million, but the net effect or the net contribution to the overall finances of the children's home is about 300,000 rand. So we do incur expenses. So again, there's a massive drop in the expenses, but that's again contributed to the consulate ball that didn't take place. Transport flat year on year, well managed under circumstances with the vehicles having to travel quite substantially, taking the children to and from schools and all other curricular activities. Our depreciation slightly down. This is mainly due to the reduced balance of our fixed assets. Our total expenses of almost 18.3 million rand for the year, which is down 1.4 million rand for the year, but unfortunately it's not quite enough in comparison to the drop in our income. If we look at the abbreviated income statement, our total income for the year just short of 17 million rand, expenses 18.3 million rand, leaving us with an operating deficit of 1.3 million rand for the year. That in comparison with the previous year where we had a deficit of about 210,000 rand. So as I mentioned, it wasn't a good year from a financial aspect for the children's home. I would like to, however, also point out that if one do ignore the change in the valuation of our investment portfolio, the children's home would have had a operating surplus of approximately 2.2 million rand for the current year, and in the previous year it would have been about 260,000 rand for the year, again a surplus. If we look at the operating surplus or deficit over the last 5 years, it shows there basically in 2015 where we started off with a very healthy 3 million rand surplus for the year, and then a deficit, and then 2 years of surpluses again, and now the last 2 years where we've had a deficit. Looking at our investments over the last 5 years, as I mentioned before, that we were severely hit by the devaluation of our investments, and as at year end we were sitting at about 10.3 million rand as at year end, and which is roughly about a 2 million rand drop from the previous financial year. If there is any questions at the end of the presentation, there is an email address that any questions or comments could be sent to. We will gladly respond and answer it as far as we can. Thank you.
Ek wil net baie dankie vir julle sê dat julle ingeskakel het en ook nou deel is van hierdie nuwe normaal van ons. En ek doen 'n beroep op julle om asseblief in te skakel by die programme van Durbanville Kinderhius en 'n pad saam met ons te loop. En ja, ek sien daar uit om julle weer volgende jaar te sien.